One thing that I've really learned these past few days as we've watched these blockades, protests, and general hashtag shutdown Canada activity try and bring our economy to a halt is that one should never underestimate the power of strong ideology. What do I mean by that? Well, I've spoken to two of the leading activists who are behind sort of two different, although not mutually exclusive, sides of all of these protests. I spoke to one of the leading climate justice activists in the country, and I spoke to one of the big Mohawk warriors in the country behind those Belleville blockades we saw. And I thought there was an interesting component to both of those conversations. The climate justice activist was someone from Toronto 350. Now, 350 is this much larger organization that an American environmental activist put together a number of years ago. And these are pretty close to being the most alarmist out there. I don't think they're as bonkers as the Extinction Rebellion people, but they're really up there in terms of their belief that we're going to have imminent destruction of basically the world as we know it in our lives if we do not do very extreme aggressive action immediately. Shut down the oil sands entirely, all of that kind of stuff, force everyone into electric cars, windmills, all that jazz. They very passionately believe it. But I must say, the gentleman I spoke to, he was really cool as a cucumber, and he was very serious and committed and calm about it. And I think one of the reasons why he was not shaken by anything that was happening, because we spoke at the time that there were arrests happening all across the country and lots of drama, is that they're true believers. These are people who have sat down and they really seriously believe that things are as dire as they are and that their actions are entirely justified. Same for the Mohawk warrior gentleman I spoke to. Andrew Brandt is his name, and he was basically saying, look, we have a problem here where First Nations people do not need to answer to Crown laws, and this is all colonial settler stuff and so forth. Therefore, yes, we're fully within our right to blockade this, that, and the other. And he lays it out in a methodical case. I completely disagree with all of the groundwork in that, all of the first principles he's using to come to those conclusions. I think he's wrong, and many First Nations, if not the majority of them, disagree with him as well. That does not represent the views of First Nations, but again, very interesting to see someone who's a true believer in all of that. And then the problem is on the flip side, the people who don't support these blockades, who do not want their commutes to be halted as they have been in Toronto, people trying to get out of downtown found they couldn't because activists were blocking GO transit lines and Via Rail blockade lines. These are just regular, decent, probably nonpartisan, good-natured middle-class Canadians who are just saying, yeah, I care about the environment. Let's recycle and let's make sure we're not polluting excessively and whatnot, have some regulations and restrictions, but yes, let's grow the economy and okay, let's go have the oil sands happen. It matters for Alberta. We care for our Albertan friends and neighbors. Let's do all that jazz and let's try and sort of find some compromise. And that is not an ideological position. Those are just regular folks out there who are living their lives and are taking the moderate position in all of this. Now, the center, I think, is there. I think that is still the center, and it's kind of heartening to see so many Canadians and so many First Nations people reject all of this stuff. But I think the reason why we are going to see continued blockades and why these people have really had momentum on their side, these activists, is because they've got the zeal, they've got the passion, they've got the true ideological belief. Because regular folks just going home on their commutes who have the very moderate and reasonable view of, well, let's, be nice to the environment while also grow our economy, they're not out there protesting, picketing. They don't have finances underwriting their views from big American organizations and so forth. They're not the ones hammering on Justin Trudeau's door, badgering all these different people, get on board with our agenda. They're not the ones with the ask. That's the problem. Middle class stability, which is what our country is all about, that is not a demand. That is kind of a natural resting place for so many people, and they cherish that, but they don't do it in this sort of very evangelical sense, which is why I'm really worried unless we kind of beat back some of this strong ideological zeal, they're going to continue to advance on all of this. They're going to continue to feel that they have the carte blanche to do what they want. It's not enough to shut down the protests as they emerge, and of course that's what should happen. If someone's blockading a rail line, you shut it down right away. Police move in immediately, which they did in Toronto the other day when those rail lines were blockaded. Kudos to them. Too bad the OPP didn't do that in Belleville, and too bad that didn't happen in other places in British Columbia and Montreal more recently. But that is just the specifics, the sort of day-to-day tactics. The overall strategy is we have to push back against the narrative. And we're seeing that more and more from some corners. Even the people who author those Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change reports that do say we have a problem on our hands, they're coming out. And they're saying, Greta Thunberg, AOC, sorry, but you're kind of overshooting right now, and we wish you just kind of calm down and step back a little bit. The rest of us need to do that now. Conservatives need to do that more. The conservative leadership race needs to push back against this really alarmist agenda that's happening from a lot of climate activists, because their ideological zeal, that's the one that's taken up a lot of space, getting a lot of the airtime, and sort of giving a free pass to a lot of the antics they're doing. That's why it seems they have the wind at their sails, even though there aren't really that many of them. But it's why when Greta Thunberg comes here to do her events in downtown Toronto and elsewhere, you get tens of thousands of people showing up behind them. I go, aren't these just decent, moderate people? What are they doing beside this fire and brimstone roadshow? That is just not a balanced event to be attending. So it's time to push back, not just when it comes to police shutting down barricades, but to push back on the underlying philosophy of all of this, to push in the other direction, tell everyone, let's calm down and let's cool our jets and talk a bit more reasonably about all of this.